I was wealthy by every standard the world uses to measure a person's worth. My family had built a business empire across 2 generations of hard work and sacrifice. I had a luxury penthouse, a company with hundreds of employees. But I was also the most foolish rich man in the entire city. My name is Arthur. Her name was Hana. And I was completely and utterly devoted to impressing her at all costs. Hana came from a wealthy family that had fallen into serious financial difficulty before I met her. She was beautiful in the way that makes a person stop thinking clearly for long periods of time. I had seen her once at a business event and decided immediately that she was the one for me. I approached her family, expressed my intentions formally, and they accepted my proposal with visible relief. I understood later that they had no real choice given the financial pressure surrounding them at that time. Hana became my fiancée. But she never truly became mine in any way that actually mattered between 2 people. She used the resources my family provided to rebuild her family's standing without ever fully accepting my heart. I knew something was missing. But I told myself that patience and persistence would eventually change her feelings toward me. I proposed the Garden of Roses to Hana. Another time, I got her a new model car, and another time, I took her to romantic lunch. On her birthday, I brought her handmade jewelry. On one particular afternoon, I found myself standing inside a luxury handbag boutique feeling completely defeated inside. Hana had rejected my invitation to dinner the previous evening without offering any real explanation for it. So I was doing what I always did, when she pulled away from me without reason or warning. I was buying her something expensive, hoping it would close the distance that kept growing between us both. The store was owned by a close friend of mine, so I was comfortable taking my time browsing slowly. I was looking at a display case with absolutely no idea what I was actually looking for in there. And then someone appeared at my side with a warm professional smile and a voice that was genuinely kind. I looked up from the display case and saw a young woman in a store uniform looking directly at me. She was more beautiful than anyone I had seen working in a retail position anywhere in the city. But what struck me more than her appearance was the specific quality of warmth that she carried with her. It was not the trained professional warmth of someone performing their job to a required standard that afternoon. It was genuinely personal. As if she was specifically happy to see me in particular standing there right then. She began showing me bags and talking about each one with knowledge that went well beyond basic sales training. And then she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me carefully with recognition forming clearly behind her bright eyes. "Excuse me, you saved me once. Near the market, remember?" I looked at her more carefully. "I remember a little. Are you okay now?" She introduced herself properly. Her name was Clara. She thanked me again for something I had almost forgotten completely. The memory came back to me slowly as she spoke about that particular night in the narrow city alley. I had been walking back from a late business meeting through one of the older parts of the city. I heard voices that carried a particular edge of people making someone feel unsafe in the dark around them. I turned into the alley and saw 3 men surrounding a young woman, who was pressed against the wall. She was holding her bag tightly and trying very hard to appear calm, when she was clearly frightened completely. I stepped between her and them without thinking about it particularly deeply as a conscious deliberate decision at all. I told them to leave. My voice and my size combined were apparently enough to make them reconsider quickly. They left. I turned to the young woman and asked if she was unhurt and had somewhere safe to go. She nodded and thanked me, and I walked away because I was already late for something else entirely that night. For me, it had been a small moment. Something any decent person would have done without a second thought about it. For her, as I would only understand much later, it had been the beginning of everything she felt after that. After she thanked me in the store, Clara looked at me with an expression that was both shy and determined. She had clearly prepared something to say and was choosing whether to actually say it standing in front of me. I have wanted to thank you properly for a very long time. Would you allow me to buy you lunch today? I almost said no. I had Hana on my mind and a gift to deliver and a rejection still stinging somewhere. How she asked made me stop before the automatic refusal left my mouth completely. I looked at the bag in my hand. The bag for the woman who had rejected my dinner invitation last night. All right. Let us go to lunch. I know a good place just around the corner from this building. She looked briefly startled in the way of someone who had prepared for refusal and received agreement instead unexpectedly. She spoke quickly with the manager and was given permission without any issue since the store was my friend's business. And just like that I found myself walking out of the boutique beside someone I had met only minutes before. We sat across from each other at a bright cafe table and talked for much longer than lunch should take. She told me she was studying while working part-time at the boutique to pay for her university fees herself. No family financial support. No connections. Just her own intelligence and her own willingness to do whatever was necessary. She was clearly brilliant. Her observations about business and people were sharper than most senior employees I had worked with. I found myself talking more openly than I had with anyone in a very long time sitting across from her. I told her about Hana without planning to mention it. About the engagement. About the rejection the previous evening. Clara listened without interrupting. Without offering easy sympathy. Without pretending the situation was simpler than it actually was. When I finished talking, she looked at me steadily and said something that I remembered long after that afternoon ended. Someone who cannot see your value, when you are standing directly in front of them, will not see it later either. I did not know what to say back to that. So I changed the subject and offered her something instead. I had a junior assistant position open in my company that I had not yet filled for several weeks. After 30 minutes of conversation, I already knew Clara was significantly overqualified for a junior assistant position, honestly. But it was the appropriate entry point and it would give her stability and a proper career foundation to build from. I have a position opening in my company. Junior assistant level. I think you would be good at it if you want it. She stared at me for a full 3 seconds without speaking, which was clearly longer than she had intended to pause. Then she blinked and composed herself and asked me with careful composure what the role would actually involve exactly. I outlined it briefly. She asked 2 or 3 intelligence-specific questions that confirmed what I had already concluded about her. Yes. I would like to accept that opportunity. Thank you for offering it to me seriously. I will not disappoint you. She meant it. Every word of it. I could hear the specific quality of sincerity that does not perform itself for effect. Clara started at my company the following Monday, and within the first week it was already obvious she was exceptional. She learned systems faster than anyone the HR team could remember training in recent company history at any level. She asked exactly the right questions at exactly the right times and never made the same mistake even twice. Senior staff who were initially skeptical about a new junior assistant were asking her opinion within the first 2 weeks. But I was barely aware of any of this at the time because my attention was still completely fixed on Hana. I was planning the next gift. Arranging the next dinner reservation. Preparing the next attempt to reach her through something. Clara was delivering my files and managing my schedule and making everything around me work smoothly without any acknowledgement from me. She was also, I would understand only later, placing a cup of exactly the right coffee on my desk every morning. The right temperature. The right strength. The right time before my first meeting without me ever asking for any of it. What I did not fully understand for a long time was the real reason Hana could never truly choose me back. Her heart had been given away completely before she ever met me or knew my family even existed in this city. His name was Leo. Her first love from her university years when everything felt permanent and simple and possible. They had been together for years. Through lectures and late nights and the particular closeness of two young people in love. And then Leo had left. His family business required him to go abroad and he went without looking back genuinely. The honest truth, which Hana would only learn much later, was that he had not simply left for business reasons. He had ended things and gone abroad and built a completely separate life without telling her what was actually happening. Hana had been left holding feelings for a man who had moved on while she stood still waiting for him to return. Into that situation my family appeared. And Hana, with limited options and real financial pressure, agreed to become my fiancée. After almost 3 years of my engagement to Hana, Leo returned to the city. He contacted Hana and suggested they meet at a restaurant to catch up as if years had not passed between them. I found out about the meeting through a mutual contact who thought I would want to know about it immediately. I told myself it was nothing. Two old university friends having a perfectly innocent dinner conversation after years apart abroad. But something that had been quietly uneasy in my chest for months became significantly louder on the evening they met. I went to the restaurant. I told myself I was passing by. I told myself I had no specific intention going in. I saw them at a table near the window from the entrance and I stopped moving before I could decide whether to enter. Hana was looking at Leo with the expression I had been trying to earn from her for 3 entire years of trying. And then Leo leaned across the table and kissed her. And she did not move away from him when he did it. I walked into that restaurant with a quality of calm that I had never felt in my life before that moment. Not the calm of someone who is not feeling anything. The calm of someone who has just understood everything all at once. Hana saw me first. Her expression moved through shock and guilt and something that looked almost like relief all at once. Leo looked at me with the particular expression of someone calculating the most advantageous way to handle an unexpected situation. I think we are done here, Hana. You should end what does not belong to you before taking what you want back. Hana stood up and moved toward me and began speaking with a mixture of justification and defensiveness and actual anger. She said things I had not expected. She said Leo was her real choice. That our engagement had never been her decision. That she had been forced into it. That I had known what the arrangement was from the beginning between our families. And the painful thing was that several of those statements contained more truth than I wanted to acknowledge standing there. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I turned and walked out of that restaurant without saying another word to either of them. I called my father from the car park outside the restaurant while the evening traffic moved around me quietly. He asked me what had happened and I told him directly without softening any part of it for his comfort. Cancel the engagement, Father. Hana is not someone I am willing to continue pursuing after what happened this evening. My father was quiet for several seconds on the phone. He knew me well enough not to argue with that particular tone. He said he would handle the formal arrangements and asked if I was alright. I told him I was fine and ended the call and sat in the car for a long time not starting the engine. 3 years. 3 years of gifts and reservations and patience and waiting and trying and hoping and being quietly set aside. And in a single evening it had ended in a restaurant with a kiss that was not meant for me to witness at all. The following morning I arrived at the office earlier than usual and sat at my desk without turning on any lights. The city was still waking up outside the large windows and I was watching it without really seeing any of it. Clara arrived at her usual time and found me sitting in the dark and did not immediately say anything at all. She turned on only the small desk lamp at the corner of the room which gave the office a softer, quieter light. Then she placed a cup of coffee exactly where she always placed it on my desk and sat down across from me. She waited. She did not fill the silence with questions or sympathy or any of the things that would have made it worse. After a long time I looked up at her and asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the restaurant. Clara. Do I look like someone who is difficult to love? Tell me honestly. I want an actual real answer from you. She looked at me steadily for a moment before she answered. Her voice was direct and completely without performance or flattery. You are genuinely one of the best people I have ever known in my entire life. That is an honest statement from me. I looked at her for a moment and then asked the follow-up question that had formed quietly in my mind. Then why did she choose someone else over me? What is it that I am actually missing or getting wrong consistently? Clara was quiet for a moment, choosing her words with the care of someone who intended every single one to land accurately. Some people do not recognize what they already have until it is completely gone from their life. I looked at her differently in that moment. Something in the specific way she said it carried weight that went beyond observation. I asked her then, not planning to, whether she was speaking from experience of her own or only about my situation. Clara, are you in love with someone? You have the particular expression of a person who is carrying that specific feeling. She went completely still. Her hands, which had been resting calmly on the desk, moved slightly in her lap before stealing again. I waited. I had asked her to speak honestly and I intended to give her the space to actually do that. When Clara spoke, her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it across all the months she had worked with me. But it was also the steadiest I had ever heard her voice. Like something long held in place finally being allowed to settle. I have been in love with you for 2 years and 6 months. Since the night you pulled me away from those men. The office was completely silent around both of us for a long moment after she finished saying those words to me. That night was the first time anyone had ever stepped in front of danger for me without being asked to do it. She looked down briefly, then back at me with eyes that were clear and not asking for anything in particular from me. I took the job to be near you. I stayed because of who you actually are. Not because of what you have financially. She paused for one breath and then finished with a complete honesty that I had not received from anyone in 3 years. I did not tell you because you were always looking for Hana. I did not want to interrupt something you wanted so much. I sat with what she had just told me and let it settle properly rather than responding immediately without thinking first. And as I sat there, the memories began coming back to me in a sequence that rearranged everything I thought I understood. The coffee that was always exactly right, placed at exactly the right moment without me ever specifying what I wanted. The lunchbox that appeared on bad meeting days when I had forgotten to eat and had not mentioned it to anyone. The jacket placed over my shoulders on the one evening I had fallen asleep at my desk working through the night alone. The organic fruit arranged carefully on the side table on the mornings after I had mentioned feeling unwell the day before. Every one of those things had registered only as the excellent performance of a very good assistant in my distracted mind. But they were not the performance of an excellent assistant. They were the consistent quiet language of someone who genuinely loved me. And I had been walking past that language every single day for 2.5 years without once reading it clearly. I had been loved, genuinely and patiently loved, the entire time I was chasing someone who was never truly choosing me back. I stood up from my chair and walked around the desk until I was standing directly in front of where Clara sat. She looked up at me with an expression that was trying very carefully not to assume anything about what I was doing. I had not planned what I was about to say. I had not rehearsed it or considered how it would land with her. I simply knew, with a certainty that had no uncertainty underneath it anywhere, what the correct question was to ask her right then. Clara, I am asking you directly and seriously right now. Will you marry me? I am not asking impulsively. I am certain. She stared at me for a long moment with an expression I had never seen on her face in all our time together. Then she looked down and I saw her hands pressed together in her lap in the specific way of someone containing something very large. My family does not have wealth or status. I do not want you to regret this decision because of what I cannot bring. I am not asking about your family's financial position, Clara. I am asking whether you will marry me. Will you or not? She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet and her expression had moved through several different things before arriving at what it settled on. Yes. I have always loved you. Yes. I will marry you. Yes. We were married within 3 hours of that conversation in my office on that same morning in the city. I called my personal lawyer and my closest family contacts and arranged everything with the particular efficiency of someone completely decided. It was not a grand ceremony. It was not the kind of event my family had been imagining for my wedding in years. But it was the most genuine thing I had participated in willingly in a very long time before that particular morning came. Clara stood beside me in the clothes she had worn to work that day and looked more beautiful than any planned occasion could have made her. My lawyer served as witness. 2 of my closest colleagues stood beside us in that small quiet room. And when it was done, I looked at the woman standing next to me and felt something I had never felt in 3 years of trying. Peace. Genuine, complete, simple peace. With exactly the right person. At exactly the right time. The news reached both families before the afternoon had finished, settling into the early evening around the city. My family's reaction moved through disbelief and concern before arriving at a series of practical questions about who Clara actually was. My father called me and asked in his careful, measured way whether I had made this decision from a clear place in myself. Clara has loved me for 2.5 years without asking me for anything at all in return for it, father. She is the reason everything in my professional life has run correctly. I simply did not recognize it until today. My father was quiet for a moment. Then he said he would like to meet her properly before the week was finished. When my parents met Clara, they asked her careful questions and she answered every one of them with direct, honest composure. My mother, who had said very little during the introduction, reached out and held Clara's hand at the end of the evening. She told Clara that a family had everything but needed someone who genuinely loved the person they were with. And that Clara, from everything she had observed that evening, clearly already understood that particular thing without needing to be taught it at all. While Clara and I were building something real together, Hana's world was moving in a very different direction entirely. Leo had returned from abroad with a confidence. What Hana did not know, and what she would only discover some months after his return to the city. Leo had married someone else abroad. He had built a full separate life that Hana had no knowledge of at all. His return to the city and his reconnection with Hana were not the reunion of 2 people choosing each other again honestly. They were the actions of a man who wanted the comfort of someone familiar while managing a complicated situation elsewhere. Hana, who had cancelled her engagement to me and publicly aligned herself with Leo, discovered this truth in a single ordinary moment. She found evidence of his marriage abroad that he had not been careful enough to fully conceal from her searching eyes. The man she had waited for. The man she had chosen over someone who had spent 3 years genuinely trying to love her. Had been using her as a temporary comfort while his real life existed somewhere else entirely without her in it at all. Hana reached out to me through a mutual contact approximately 4 months after Clara and I had married each other. She wanted to meet. She wanted to talk. She wanted, I understood from the message, to revisit something that no longer existed. I did not respond with anger. I did not respond with the satisfaction of someone whose position had been vindicated by events. I responded with the simple truth of a situation that had moved completely beyond what any meeting could change or revisit. I am genuinely sorry about what happened with Leo, Hana. I hope you find what you are actually looking for one day. But I am married to Clara now. And I am exactly where I am supposed to be with exactly the right person for me. I wished her well and I meant it. Not with bitterness. Not with triumph. Just with the clean simplicity of a finished chapter. She had made her choices. I had made mine. And the consequences of each had arrived with the particular fairness that life sometimes delivers.